What's going on, guys? Armand here. Welcome back to the channel. So I've noticed that these like podcast style videos, or almost like a new way of vlogging, or just kind of like sitting in your office and vlogging and throwing b-roll over it, has become really popular lately. I would like to become more consistent on YouTube. That was a goal of mine for 2023. So here we are. So the topic today I want to talk about is mistakes I've made in my photography career, especially early on. And the first one is picking travel and landscape photography as my niche. Now, I don't necessarily think choosing that as like my main niche was a bad idea, because obviously I love it. It's fun to shoot. It's fun to travel. Everybody loves to travel, of course, but it's definitely one of the hardest niches to make money in my opinion, especially early on, because the way I saw photography, for me, that was more of like a form of art, because I was really inspired by people like Peter Lick, Marlon Holden, obviously Ansel Adams, and there's just so many like really talented, great landscape travel photographers out there. It's definitely one of the harder ones to make money in, because your main sources of money are travel influencing, which wasn't even a thing when I first started, fine art print sales, tourism boards, things like that. Licensing is another big one. Early on, when you're just starting off and you don't really have like a name for yourself, it's really hard to make money. And I think early on versus now, you really needed that follower count for brands to even take you seriously, or tourism boards to take you seriously, because you're basically like an advertiser for them. And in the beginning, it was a struggle. I started in 2017. I've been doing photography since 2012, but I started doing it full time in 2017. I would say the first like 3 years was really hard until I got my first like big major client, which luckily I'm still working with them now. I can't say who it is because I'm under contract, but it's a big client. Okay, so to piggyback off of the last thing I said about travel photography being a really hard niche, is being able to add value or offer some kind of service, especially like locally and within your community and stuff like that, right? So if you're a portrait photographer, wedding photographer, product photographer, whatever, those are all service-based styles of photography, right? Like, nobody is going to be like, hey, can I pay you to go to Italy and take, landscape pictures for me? Like, I wish it worked like that, but it kind of doesn't. So your target audience is going to be much smaller and much more niche based, versus something like that where, everybody needs some kind of headshots or portraits done, right? So, or people around you are getting married all the time. So there's always like, think of it like supply and demand. And that was something I totally did not think about early on. And yeah, in the beginning, it was really hard because I was very like stubborn and hard-headed about it. And I was like, no, I'm a landscape photographer. Like, I don't want to take portraits. So eventually I created a portrait portfolio for myself, and then I started gaining clients that way. And then the one really big client I have now, I've done a bunch of portrait work for them and their vendors and stuff like that. So it really helps to diversify, in my opinion. To also piggyback again off of the first thing I said about, choosing travel photography as my niche, is not photographing people or products. So obviously travel influencing is really big now. And part of that is working with brands and stuff like that. And a lot of times I've found that like brands, they don't have like a huge imagination, right? They want to be able to see their products through your photos, right? Like, so for example, if I went out in the forest or, wherever, and I took like some cool photos of, like rain jackets, like in the rain while it's raining out, and they looked really good, a brand might see that and be like, oh, hey, like you did like this photo shoot for these jackets. We would love to have you do something like that or something similar, right? Which I did not do any of that. I was like landscape only, like epic sunset, sunrise, like that was it. And I didn't diversify my portfolio as much as I could have and really capitalize on the cool locations I was in. Because I've been all over Europe, Asia, all over the US, Canada, you know, list goes on. But that was a big mistake I made, because brands would love to see your products in these epic landscapes and cool locations and all that stuff. And for me, it was all about like preserving like my vision of the art and all that, which, you know, if you travel, you can do both. Like, there's no reason why you can't bring products with you and shoot them on location and, you know, stuff like that. So that was definitely a big oversight for me. So one photographer I follow, his name is Mark Denny. He's pretty big on YouTube and Instagram and such. He quoted somebody, and I'm gonna quote him, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but basically, if you as a landscape photographer want to add value to your audience or other people or whatever, it's pretty much like people want the landscape experience or landscape education, because they want to be able to go out and take those photos. So that's like one big way you can make money from landscape photography is workshops. People love workshops, especially like old people. They love seeing pretty locations. They love going to the locations. You know, even aspiring professionals or aspiring photographers, you know, they want you to take them to cool locations, or you might create a course and have like digital downloads and stuff like that. So early on in my career, I did not understand branding, and that was another oversight of mine, was not building a brand or like a consistent brand for myself. And if you go to any website of any brand, it could be clothing brands or product brands or, you know, whatever it is, right? They usually specialize in one or very few things. There's just like a consistent brand message of who they are, what they do, all those things. And they all usually tie together really well, you know, branding. And that was not something I really even thought of early on, especially now because of the way social media works and everybody has no attention span, whatever. If they go to your website, they're gonna scroll through it for like 10 seconds and you instantly have to catch their attention. They'll know right away if they wanna hire you or not. You know, you really just need branding and that clear, consistent brand message throughout your website. And that was something I did not have early on. I do now though, so not all is lost. I think definitely one of my biggest mistakes early on was not charging enough. And honestly, it happens to everyone, right? Because there's no like rule book for freelancing. There's no guide or manual. It's all just like word of mouth, like, hey, what's this person charging, you know, blah blah blah. And sometimes you just have to like make it up as you go. Also, if you live in a big city, which, you know, I used to live in California. If you live in a really populated area, if you're not willing to do it for really cheap, chances are somebody is going to. And a lot of people do like to price shop when they're hiring photo and video people. If you're like a good salesperson, you can definitely upcharge clients. There's like a million ways of doing it. It's also really easy to not turn down work if you haven't worked for a while and you've had a dry spell with your freelancing. So, you know, for example, if you normally charge like $1,000 a day and someone is like, hey, like I'll pay you $300, you know, if you haven't worked in a while, that $300 sounds pretty good. But if you're getting clients pretty regularly, you can normally tell them like, hey, this is the price, take it or leave it. Like, I know what I'm worth, and they came to you for a reason because they like your work. Like, you know what you're doing. It's like the saying, buy once, cry once. But not charging enough was definitely something I did quite a bit early on, because it can be hard to gauge sometimes like how much to charge. Also, depending on how your client is, some things there are minimums for, and a lot of times if your photography or your art, whatever, is like really personal to you, it's really hard to put a price tag on it. You know, like for myself, if someone said, hey, I'll pay you to travel and, you know, go to Italy, take these photos, right? I would probably say yes without pay, you know, if the trip is covered. But, you know, you really have to consider your time, your gear, your expenses, all of these things. Sometimes as creatives, if you're like truly a creative person or an artist, it's really easy to undervalue yourself, and you have to separate the business from the art. And it's hard to do sometimes, but it happens to all of us. And the final thing, which I am still guilty to this day, is making unnecessary gear upgrades and buying new gear all the time. I love camera gear. Everybody loves camera gear. Lighting, tripods, cameras, lenses, whatever. It's fun. We all like it, you know? Early on, I was changing my setup every other day, right? Like, I want the 70 to 200, then the next day I don't want it. I want the 100 to 400, and it's like, before you know it, you have a huge box of lenses that, you know, you're not even using. But this year I finally decided I'm sticking with my setup. I don't want to buy anything else for like another like 5 years, no more camera upgrades. Cause what I have is like, it gets literally any job done, you know, unless there's something I literally need for a specific job, then, you know, I'll buy it. But yeah, lots of unnecessary gear upgrades. Like, if you're getting the job done and your clients are happy, that's all that matters. You can also rent gear at like a fraction of the price, you know, like the new Sony 50 1.2 lens or 1.4 lens, you know, that's going for $2,000, or the 1.4 is $1,200, when you could rent it for like $100, get the job done, get paid, pocket the rest of that money, and, you know, maybe charge the equipment to your client, right? Like, there's so many ways of renting and getting around having to buy new gear all the time, unless it's like absolutely necessary for that job. But definitely a profit mindset is like the way I'm going forward now. So I definitely don't need more gear or lenses. You know, there's always ways of rationalizing spending money, which I like to do quite often. But yeah, those are some of the things I made mistakes on early on in my career. And you know what? Sometimes I slip, and I still make mistakes to this day. Like, it happens to everybody. We're only human, and we're all here to learn, right? So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this video. If you like this kind of like sitting down, just very chill, talking to the camera kind of videos. I am trying to grow the community and my audience. So if you guys aren't subscribed, please do, and like the video, and I will see you guys very soon.